On today's show, what has Jalen Green been working on this offseason, and how can he sustain the level of play that he had last March throughout this upcoming campaign? It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Here to talk all things Jalen Green on today's episode. Jalen Green heading into this all-important year 4. We've done so many different episodes, talked so many different times this offseason about the importance of this upcoming year. We're not going to have to relitigate the whole, is it a make or break season for Jalen Green? We've kind of talked that discussion to death. What we are going to focus on, though, in today's episode are the things that it looks like Jalen Green has been working on this offseason in preparation for year 4, what we kind of expect for him to kind of have added to his game, and the things that we hope that he's worked on this offseason, in addition to the things that we think he's working on, that we have a little bit of video evidence, some of those kind of offseason highlight reels and things that we can kind of pick apart. A lot of credit to Swish Cultures on social media for sharing some really great kind of these, I won't say in-depth videos, but kind of a nice little peek behind the curtain at some of the skill work that Jalen Green has been doing with trainer Jamal Dash over the offseason. And we're going to get into some of the things that he's been working on, as well as whether or not that March surge from last season was real, whether it was fake, and kind of how Jalen can ideally sustain that level of play over the course of an entire season. Madison, you ready to get into this stuff, man?
Let's do it.
So let's start with we're going to start with the skill work. So for anybody who's not familiar, there's a very popular basketball skills coach trainer named Jamal Dash that Jalen Green has been in the lab with, working with this offseason. And as I already alluded to, Swish Cultures on social media has shared some kind of behind the scenes footage and clips of the things that these two guys have been working on. And a lot of it kind of boils down to things like working on Jalen Green's pace, his balance, and kind of staying low with his dribble, being able to work on different counters depending on how guys are guarding him. But it was really cool to just kind of watch some of these clips. It's about 4 or 5 clips in total where you see exactly how trainer Dash is coaching Jalen and really showing him, hey, okay, so you're expecting this defender to do this, right? This is how you're going to counter that, and then having him walk through the motions and then actually getting to see it in real time, him working on these skills.
Yeah, I thought it was actually very informative to watch NBA players work, and they do a lot of wonky stuff in their workouts, and we don't always know how that applies or why they're doing those certain things. But I really enjoyed Swish Culture and Dash really taking the time out to explain to us why they're doing particular workouts. And in Jalen in particular, we always want to know what these guys are working on. What are the points of emphasis going into the offseason? How are they training to get better? And it seems like Jalen is putting a lot of emphasis on his pace and understanding his counters and where his spots are coming from in there, which we all think is great for Jalen, because a lot of times he could go 100 miles a minute, right, and really telegraph where he's going, even though he's the fastest guy on the court. But adding that pace and adding the different counters in between the workouts, I think is really essential for him. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I really enjoy, watching not only do they have the clips rolling, but they also have a YouTube video, which is a bit more extended, with a little bit more detail. I really enjoyed watching that video because they show where Jalen is, where there were minor things where Dash was telling Jalen to improve or correcting on him, like when he was crossing over around the pick, how to throw the ball out in front of him so that guys can't poke the ball out from behind him. And that's some of the stuff that we see Jalen struggle with when being trusted to have the ball in his hands at the end of games and really being, we call it tighter handle, but just being secure with the ball and also, staying low during those opportunities. You said that earlier, and that's one of the things Dash was pointing out. Hey, you got to stay low when you're in those, so you're always in attack mode, so you don't show the ball. And I really like those type of things being pointed out to Jalen, because those things will really help him in crunch time and be able to finish games with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, when you start talking about how the top athletes, the 99th percentile superstars in the league, the reason they have an advantage is, right, a lot of people can be, 99th percentile athletes, right? It's, can you start to marry your insane athletic gifts with the skill, right? With the timing, with the craft, all this stuff. And as simple as it may seem, right? If Jalen, if he's walking the ball back out after his initial attack, if he's trying to reload and get back in and attack with another drive, if he's not, low with his dribble, if he's not in attack mode, then he has to waste that time to get back down and then go and attack, right? Whereas if he's low already when he's backing the ball out or resetting, then if the defender's not right up on him, then he can pull for the three or pull for the mid-range shot. Or if the defender does press back up on him, then he's already in attack mode. He can just turn on the jets and get right back to the rim, right? Reload, switch hands, switch directions, whatever. That was one really cool little kind of segment that Coach Dash spent a little bit of time talking to Jalen about. The other thing that I really liked was, you hear this all the time, and Dash was talking to Jalen about not, you talk all the time about not telegraphing your passes, right? Don't use your eyes to show where you're going to send the basketball, but he started talking about using it as a weapon, right? Distracting with your eyes, throwing defenders off by making it look right. Whether, you talk about, obviously everybody knows what a pump fake is, but being able to deflect with your eyes, right? Like if you look up at the rim, like you're getting ready to shoot, then you can kind of freeze a defender in place or get them to commit like you're about to take a shot and then drive around them. And so seeing him kind of illustrate the different ways that Jalen can use these small little advantages in his game, that's the kind of work that it feels like Jalen has been really focused on this offseason, is really the refining elements of his game, things that are going to be so niche, right? They're so small in the grand scheme of things. He's spent so much time refining the big parts of his game, right? He's gotten better as a ball handler. He's gotten better as a playmaker, as a decision maker, as a scorer, just finding different ways to be, I guess, more confident in his ability to score the basketball. Now you start to add all these little wrinkles into it, and it's going to make him a really deadly weapon.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really informative because it almost adds a certain level of also pace in slow, giving you a half second of freezing your defender. And those small details. I was watching another Dash video where Karl-Anthony Towns was shooting shots in the gym, and before he catch his shoot, he looked to the left and looked to the right. Dash didn't tell him to do it. It's second nature. You could tell he had been taught this. And then he explained, hey, this is going to give you 0.4 of a seconds, but that means a lot in the grand scheme of things. And understanding how that also can manipulate pace in a game, right? Dash also talked about in one of the videos, Jalen was kind of dribbling into his step back, and he had a lot of pound dribbles. It seemed like a lot of excess dribbling happening. And he was like, hey, kind of dribble slower and flow into those dribbles and bounce in a wider manner, where Jalen had dribbled the ball 5 or 6 times, where you could just dribble the ball 3 times and it kind of just flows. He said, be natural with it and let that flow. And it just creates this kind of lull you to sleep type of handle that guys aren't ready for when you do your step back into a three. And so those subtle things that I hadn't even thought about could give you a half a second that really deceives a defender and gets you open for a wide open shot when you're going to make your move, making everything look the same before you burst in and out of moves. I thought it was really key, and I'm glad Jalen's working on those type of things. I think those wrinkles will allow him to get cleaner looks and continue to deceive guys. And so we hope that that pace will really be working off for Jalen this coming season.
Sometimes when you're an athlete like Jalen, sometimes all you need is that extra half second, right? And his curtains for the defender. We talked about this a little bit last season, right? Jalen kind of added that hang dribble to his game. That was an element of him being able to slow down and manipulate his pace offensively that allowed him to open up some opportunities that weren't always there before, when he was always just 0 to 60, right? Or 0 to 100. That's all he knew how to do, was just one speed go. And so as he starts to learn how to manipulate those things, it's going to lead to a lot of easier opportunities for him and for his teammates. Again, because he is a blossoming playmaker, has gotten significantly better in that regard of his game as well. We want to know what you think, though. We're going to put a link to the whole Swish Cultures video with Jalen and Trainer Dash in the episode description. Go watch that if you haven't seen it. It's really informative, and come back and let us know what you think about the training video in the YouTube comments. Coming up, though, was that March surge from Jalen Green real? Was it fake? And how can we see him sustain that level of play over the course of an entire season? We're also going to get some of our season predictions for Jalen Green a little later on in the show. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticket offers. But that's not the only feature that they have that's incredible. First off, they've got ticket coverage, so if something happens on your event, then they'll take care of you. They've got a great customer service line. Lowest price guarantee, seat view, so you know exactly what type of bang you're getting for the buck that you are spending. My favorite feature, though, is their all-in pricing. You toggle it on, and they are fully transparent with you, because I don't know about you, my least favorite thing when I'm buying tickets with other ticketing websites or dealers is you go through the whole process, and then at the very, very end, you think you're getting a great deal on tickets, and then they hit you with the digital handling fee and the service charges and all these other fees that are associated with buying tickets online. Doesn't happen with Game Time. They show you their all-in price guarantee. Just toggle the option on, and then you know exactly how much you're going to be spending throughout the entire process. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, I know I opened this episode by saying we're not going to relitigate stuff that we've talked about here on the show before, but one thing we are going to relitigate on this episode is that March stretch by Jalen Green, because that's the stretch that I think many a Rockets fan turn back to Madison and look at, and we really hope that is the version of Jalen Green that we can ideally tap into and get moving forward for this Rockets team to have the success that they want to be able to have, for them to reach new heights and be the best version of themselves. They need Jalen Green to not necessarily be that guy, because if he's that guy over the course of an entire 82-game season, it's game over for the NBA. Like that's going to be one of the top 5 players in the league one day. But that's the funny thing, right? Is that's the kind of crazy upside potential that Jalen has when he has it going. The question is, can we get it more consistently over the course of an entire season? For those who don't remember, the month of March was absolutely insane for Jalen Green. Over a 15-game stretch. So we're not even just talking about the Rockets' 11-game win streak. We're talking about the entire month of March. Across those 15 games, Jalen Green averaged 27.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.9 assists on just under 50% shooting from the floor, almost 41% from long distance, and then the free throw line, you'd like it to be a little bit better, but 76.7%. So these are some insane splits from Jalen Green. The three-point shooting in particular kind of shows you when he's got it going from deep, that's what really, I think, unlocks the rest of his game.
Yeah. For me, I kind of think of it in a different way. For me, the month of March was about rhythm and confidence for Jalen Green to me. And I think that the 3-point shooting came as a consequence of the rhythm that he got himself into. And I think that rhythm was due to Ime Udoka upping the pace. Once Ime Udoka began to open the pace of games, Jalen Green got out in transition and got a lot of layups and dunks. Once he started getting layups and dunks, he got free 6 to 8 points a game off that. There's like the Phoenix games kind of start this where Jalen is just out there getting dunks, and then his 3-point shot is all of a sudden on. To me, that is not a coincidence. Once Jalen is feeling good, he feel like he's involved in the game. He begins to become a better shooter, and it's because he's a rhythm player. Jalen has kind of built his game, and you can tell that, Steven Silas and Rockets brass have encouraged him to be a 3-point shooter, but I don't think Jalen is just a 3-point shooter. That shouldn't be how Jalen built his game, as just this step back 3-point shooter, just this shooter. He is the type of guy that needs to find rhythm so he can then become the shooter, the dynamic scorer, the all around player. And one of the ways that he gets into rhythm, I think, is by finding easy buckets in the flow of the offense, whether that be by backdoor cuts from Alperen Sengun, whether that be by getting out in transition. And that's why I think, we talked about this during the season, but there should just be a rule that whenever you get a rebound on the missed shot, that you pass it up to one of your guards, including Jalen Green. Like, we don't need our bigs dribbling up the court, because that's how important getting him into rhythm really helps the rest of his game and really helps the rest of the Rockets offense. So I think March was about Jalen figuring out how to get in rhythm. It was figuring out easy ways for him to get a couple easy buckets early in the game that allows him to get his confidence, get his feet under him, and ignite the rest of his offense.
If you watched our recent episode where we did a Steven Adams deep dive, one thing that you should be incredibly excited about is Steven Adams being a great outlet passer, right? When he does get the rebound. So not only will Steven Adams do the dirty work and box out for his guards so that they can be the one to get the ball and just jet in transition, just like Russell Westbrook did for years in OKC, just like Ja Morant would do in Memphis. That's going to be big for Jalen Green to be able to get the rebound and just be the first one gunning in transition to get those reps, but then also to be on the receiving end of some outlet passes from Steven Adams. Hopefully something that he can teach, a thing or two to Alperen Sengun about, right? Because Alperen Sengun absolutely has the passing chops to be a fantastic outlet passer as well. And if the understanding can just be, all right, as soon as the ball comes down, as soon as we have possession, Jalen, you're gone in transition, and we're gonna just launch it down the floor, throw CJ Stroud in a Rockets jersey, and that's what we're hoping to see out there on the court. But I do think a big part of it, you talk about the rhythm element of it, right? The Rockets were playing a faster pace. Post All-Star break, that was absolutely something that Ime Udoka and the rest of the coaching staff wanted the team to do. However, I do think, and I don't want this to come off as, because there was a whole thing made about Jalen Green suddenly started playing well without Alperen Sengun.
Oh, no, it has nothing to do.
I think a small part of it, though, is Jalen Green did get more touches without Alperen Sengun, and that feeds into the rhythm element of it. I don't for any second believe, they can't coexist, they don't work well together. No, their skill sets are so entirely complementary of one another. They should absolutely feast together. But it is about being in rhythm for Jalen, right? And I do think that at times, if the offense is so much predicated on, Sengun's got the ball in his hands or he's doing XYZ with the ball, if Jalen doesn't have that same rhythm or that same feel, like he's in the zone, he's in, he's flowing and he's within the, he's got his rhythm going, then he's going to struggle. So I think that there's a delicate balance to be had between those two, where obviously you still want to let Sengun be Sengun. You still want to let him be the focal point, the offensive hub. You still want to let him generate high quality offense, which is what he can do. But you've also got to find ways to kind of complement these two guys and let Jalen have some reps, where we know that Sengun can be a great screen setter. We know that he can be a great release valve in the pick and roll. So finding ways for those two guys to work together is going to be a big part of both of them taking a step forward this next season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been plenty of games and evidence of Jalen and Sengun having excellent chemistry in the two-man game. I think it started with John Lucas bringing them together their rookie years and saying, hey, you guys got to work together. You guys got to, it's y'all's two worlds. Y'all have to work together in this two-man game. And I actually think they have really good chemistry. I think Jalen can improve his off-ball movement a bit better and become a bit better as a catch and shoot guy, so he can convert on some of those easy catch and shoot shots. But also, I just think the usage element came from Ime not trusting Jalen to run the offense for long stretches of time due to the poor handle in the beginning of the season, especially in crunch time, him turning the ball over and Emma having a very short leash on that type of basketball, because that is losing basketball. And so, like we were talking about in the first part of the segment, that's why Jalen's handle is so important right now, because he needs to be able to get in and out of the offense, run pick and roll, screen and roll with Alperen and Sengun without turning the ball over, without guys poke checking him in the back. So we need Jalen to initiate the offense with Alperen Sengun, because as we saw throughout the season, when Alperen Sengun had it going and was the star player, they began to double and triple team him, and he did not have enough help around him to continue the offense. That's where Jalen was supposed to come in and help him. And as we got towards the end of our win streak and we start playing real teams, playoff teams with real playoff game plans, they begin to trap Jalen, and he didn't have good enough outlets to make plays. And so in that way, these guys are perfect matches for each other. So when guys begin to trap one another, they won't be able to do that because the other guy will feast. And so we really need Jalen's handle to be tighter, and him to understand the different ways to get himself in rhythm so that he can be the electrifying step back creator towards the end of the game, but also find easy ways to get easy buckets. I think he's already recognized getting out in transition, but he needs to find ways in the half court to get in rhythm that is very easy. One of the ways is backdoor cuts with Alperen Sengun, and another way is really focusing on taking good in-between mid-range shots, and really working on that part of his game. I hope he's putting just as much focus on his in-between game, his mid-range, his floater game as he is in his pace.
One thing that I would note too, I think it's so important. You're absolutely right. Him being able to find ways to get himself going is going to be a big part of his game this next season. I will say that one area that he did regress this past year, and I thought this was going to be an area that would be really easy for him to continue to build up on, and that's actually his free throw rate. Yep. He did not get to the line enough, and that is the number one way that star players in today's NBA can get there. Look, you might be bricking every single shot from outside. You might not be able to hit anything. You might be smoking every layup at the rim, but if you can just get to the free throw line, if you can initiate contact and force the referee to blow the whistle, then you can get to the free throw line, see some easy ones go in. Jalen Green's free throw rate was actually down this past year. So his free throw rate in his sophomore campaign was, or I guess let's go his rookie year, his free throw rate is .247. Then it went up to .341. And then this past season was back down to .264. So his free throw rate regressed the number of times that he was actually getting to, or free throw attempts per field goal attempt is the actual equation, but basically just how often he's getting to the free throw line. And then just his raw free throw attempts cratered this past season too. His sophomore campaign, he's up to just over 6 free throw attempts per game. That's a pretty respectable number, right? And for a guy like Jalen Green, you'd hope to see you could get, in a world where he's getting that number up to at least 6 a game, but somewhere in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range would be fantastic, because then you're talking about anywhere from 8 to 10 free throws a game. That's a free 8 to 10 points, right? If you're shooting just barely 80%, that's a free 8 points per game. That's the easiest way to iron out your efficiency and get yourself some easy points on the board, especially when you're struggling from anywhere else on the floor. It could be maybe his outside shot's going, but he can't score at the rim, or vice versa, right? The free throws will always be there for you, but you got to find a reliable way to generate them. And I do think that that's one area where Jalen continuing to build his body, getting bigger, getting stronger, having a better understanding of how to, I guess, fake out defenders, right? Because there's one thing, if you're just relying on sheer raw athleticism to beat a defender, that defender is going to maybe not necessarily be able to recover fully, but you didn't exactly, I guess, trick the defender or beat them, right? You don't have them super off balance because you shook them with a move. I'm going to make the claim here that if a defender is off balance because you completely cooked them with a move, they're more likely to foul you on that possession than if you just straight line drive and get past them, right? So because at that point they're completely thrown off, right? And they have no choice but to just grab your arm, shove you in the back, do whatever to try and prevent you from scoring. So free throws are going to be a big part of Jalen Green's game this upcoming season, I feel like. Coming up, we want to get into some season predictions for Jalen Green, what we want to see out of him this next year. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So head on over to FanDuel.com. Take a look at any of the wagers that might interest you. You can take a look at the NBA Finals favorite. You can take a look at the NBA Cup, or my personal favorite is the Rookie of the Year rankings, where Reed Sheppard is currently in a dead heat, a tie with Zach Edey, the favorites to win Rookie of the Year at plus 600. So go throw down some money on Reed Sheppard to win Rookie of the Year and then get access to NFL Sunday Ticket. So just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's get into what we're hoping to see out of Jalen Green this upcoming season. We'll make some predictions for how we think this next season goes for Jalen Green. Madison, why don't you go ahead and lead us off here? What are you hoping to see out of Jalen Green this next year, and what do you think he's going to, accomplish in the way of we'll just say production-wise this next season?
Yeah, so to me, I think Jalen won't quite be the player in March, but I do expect him to take a step forward in his efficiency. I do expect him to be a more efficient player, be a more consistent player. But until Jalen, I feel like, finds ways to get into rhythm in the half court consistently, most superstar players who build their games around their bread and butters, whether it's Ja Morant's floater or Devin Booker's jump shots in the lane, Chris Paul's elbow jump shots, that's automatic. All major superstars have their bread and butter. They know what they're trying to get to, and they have counters out of that. They built their game out of that. Right now, for me, Jalen Green's game is built around step back threes. That is his bread and butter. And right now, he's just not a good enough shooter. He's not a Steph Curry, Ray Allen type of shooter. And until he improves that efficiency and gets to that level, I think right now his game will be more predicated. I think he understands that getting out in the fast break will get him into rhythm more readily. But in the games where the team is not able to get out and run, I expect Jalen to struggle. And so I expect his numbers to be kind of similar to his post-All-Star break numbers, where he has some really good highs and also has some really low lows. But really overall comes out to be a more efficient player and an all-star level player, where he averages about 44% from the field and about 36% from three, and probably clocking in around 22 to 23 points a game, with about 5 rebounds and another 4 assists. And him initiating the offense a lot more, him understanding how to get into rhythm, and really leading his team into to a solid play-in spot.
I love that point you brought up about the bread and butter move, because now that I think about it,
he doesn't have it.
He doesn't have a bread and butter move. The one that we see the most of is that step back 3-pointer, but it's more or less, it's less his bread and butter move and more so by necessity is the problem, right? Because so many times Jalen Green would be caught with, a grenade, shot clock running down. And unfortunately, he's the one guy on the roster that can reliably create separation and create his own look. So if it's a broken play, shot clock's running down, you're not going to throw the ball to Dillon Brooks to do something with it last minute, with the shot clock running down. It would, oftentimes that responsibility would fall on Jalen Green. And unfortunately that hurts your numbers, right? If you've got, a live grenade and you got 5 seconds to do something with it, you got to step into a ill-advised step back 3-pointer, or you got to, drive and get to an off balance midi floater, fade away, whatever you want to call it. I think for me, I would love to see Jalen Green discover what his true bread and butter piece is, right? Is it a floater, right? Can he add, or can he establish a floater game this season? Is it as simple as just him relying on, maybe he does utilize the step back, but maybe he realizes that he needs to do it from the mid-range more often, right? He's a guy that can create separation in space whenever he wants to. Maybe it's as simple as just he's able to get to that. And I don't know if Jalen will ever be, a greater than 50% mid-range shooter, but if he can get that number up to, 47, 48, 49, like that's a respectable enough percentage that as long as you're not like, low 40s shooting from the mid-range, then if that's the thing that gets him going, I've been on record as saying this, I don't know how many different times, if Jalen Green needs some shots to just go in, if he needs to take some quote unquote like analytically bad shots just to get the juices going, and then he's comfortable and then he's in rhythm to then hit those threes or to be able to feel a little bit more confident driving to the rim, then by all means, like I want him to discover what his bread and butter shot is, what his bread and butter move is. Everybody's got one, and for him to one day become and elevate his play and grow into the star player that we hope he can still become, he's going to have to discover what his move is. And it could be anything, right? It could be the step back. It could be that floater in the lane. I don't think it's going to be hit like a back to the basket game, but at this point, that's kind of the big question mark with him, right? Is can he find something to reliably generate offense? And honestly, as weird as this may seem, it could just be getting to the free throw line, right? The guys have made entire careers about being able to get to the free throw line. I'm going to throw out an old, this is a little bit of a deep cut, right? Kevin Martin, Kmart. That dude could get to the free throw line with the best of them, right? He was never like a true blue, like superstar, star caliber level player, but he was a damn good scorer, and he could score with the best of them. And he did that because he knew how to manipulate defenses and get to the free throw line. So if that's all Jalen Green adds to his game is a reliability to generate free throws almost on command, where he can get into that, 8 to 10 free throws per contest kind of mentality, then awesome. He can still rely on the transition game. He can still rely on that element of his game when it's available. But then in the half court, okay, cool. Things are slowed down. We're in the half court. Bet I can still get to the free throw line whenever I want to because you can't stay in front of me. I'm too fast.
Yeah, man. I really feel like Jalen kind of the way Jalen trains, I feel like is he trains to take what the defense gives him as well, right? Which is a great thing to train on, but I feel like he never really established how he gets his buckets consistently, right? And so he never got, what would I say?
Well, wait, what's crazy is we back when he was in the G League, we saw the step back being used all over the floor, right? Yeah. We saw it from everywhere. And then when he made it to the NBA,
he uses it, and he does use it, but to me, he doesn't know, like, he doesn't go to, I feel like he doesn't focus on, hey, when I'm struggling, I know I need to get to the mid-range, and I know that is a shot that I can get and make every single time. And if I take it this first time and I miss it, it doesn't matter. I know I can make that shot. It should be like a layup to him because there's so much more volatility on the three-point shot. The best three-point shooters in the world go cold, right? And it's hard for a young player who's trying to be consistent, who's dealing with for them to build their game from the three-point line in. He needs to be building his game from the mid-range to the paint in. And he needs to focus on that being his bread and butter, and because that can become consistent very easily. If he puts a whole offseason in saying, hey, how do I get my looks from mid-range and get them every single time? No one will be able to stop him. And then he'll be able to parry that to get to the rim, because now teams will be coming up and trying to take away that in-between game, and then he'll be able to use his speed for layups. But I just feel like Jalen's been taught and, encouraged to become this super high volume three-point shooter, and I don't think it served him well. He's not some amazing mid-range shooter, but I think if he worked on it as well as he worked on his three-point shot, and I don't know how hard he's working on any of this. He could very well be working on that mid-range just as much as the three-point shot. But from my eyes, I can tell that the three-point shot is what he's most focused on, and we've heard from reporting that is what upper brass wants from him. And I just think, for the archetype of player that he is as a superstar player, he has to be able to establish ways to get in rhythm. And the great Kobe Bryant talked about this in a documentary about watching Jordan and understanding how did he get to his spots, what are the type of shots he's looking for, and how do I get that? And that gets him into rhythm, where now Kobe can have a 10 3-pointer game. You know what I mean? It's those type of things where Jalen has to find what is his. How does he get buckets? For Ja Morant, it's getting to the basket and floaters. He's able to play make out of that. He's able to do so many different things out of that because everybody's trying to stop him from doing that one thing that he's so great at. I think Jalen has to find a skill set in the offense that he is absolutely great at and then build his offense around that.
If I could just copy paste like a shot profile onto Jalen from any other player in the league that I think would benefit him the most, can you guess which player I'm going to pick?
Ooh. No. I feel like he can go a lot of ways.
He can go a lot of ways, but I think there's one guy that makes so much sense, and De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah,
give me like this. So many similarities across the board. Now Fox is a little bit more of a natural one than Jalen is, and Jalen's a bit more of a natural two. But you see the ways that Fox gets himself going, the ways that he scores, the ways that he puts pressure on the opposing defense. I feel like Jalen has all the tools to do exactly that, and especially the way my favorite thing, right? The way Fox drives, and he does. It's not like quite like a step back or a snatch back. It's just like a drive and a stop and pop right at the free throw line, right? Because he's so quick that once the defender is going, he's got such great control over the ball that he just has it on a string, and he just stops and he's right there at the free throw line, right? That's his sweet spot, and he can get that shot pretty much whenever he wants. And so if Jalen can develop that, and the benefit that Jalen has, he's like twice the athlete that Fox is, so he can get to that free throw line and then just elevate, right? We've seen him do it I don't know how many different times. Now, a big part of that, and this goes back to some of the other things that we saw him working on this earlier this offseason, right? Balance, pace, things like that, is if he can get to that spot. But if he's like, leaning sideways and if he's completely off kilter, then like that's a bad look. That's a bad percentage shot, and it's not going to go in like half the time. Well, I'd take half the time. That's 50%, but whatever, quarter of the time, whatever number you want to throw out there. But if he can get to that spot with confidence, if he can get to that spot in a consistent fashion, right, to where he's not just doing it recklessly with reckless abandon, but he's actually getting there in a calculated manner, like, okay, hey, I'm going to drive this way, I'm going to pull it back this way, or I'm going to sidestep you this way, and I'm going to get to that spot on the floor and then elevate, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I've hit 1,001 of those jumpers in practice, and I know that shot's going to go in. That's my go-to shot. That's what I want to see out of him most this season, man. Exactly.
And my guy would be, I'd like him to watch some film on Allen Iverson. Now, a lot of people watch Allen Iverson film and the crazy layups and the crossovers, but Allen Iverson built his game around this mid-range shot in the paint where he's just floating around the mid-range shot and shoot it. None of his highlights are going to be that. But if you watch Allen Iverson growing up, he always had that mid-range shot as a counter for everything that he did, and he could get to that at any point, and he just packed up the buckets off that stuff, and then he's able to get all the way to the basket. So I think because Jalen is slight of frame, he's going to have to take those type of shots in the mid range. He's not going to be able to be in the post. And another guy is Devin Booker outside of the post. Devin Booker also shoots a lot of elbow jumpers without putting guys in the mid post. Those are the type of things I think if Jalen really put a point of emphasis to become automatic in those areas, I think it would help bring rhythm to the rest of his game, and he'll be able to play more freely and get himself into more rhythm. And then he'll be that player that we saw in March for the entire season.
You shared your stat line prediction earlier, kind of the post All-Star break numbers is where you think he's going to settle in this next year. I like a lot of those numbers. I think I'm right there with you. Something like 22, 23 a game, and then 5 boards, 4 assists seems like a really realistic and attainable stat line for Jalen. Now, there is the outcome, the upper end outcome, where like if Jalen comes in and the 3 ball is more consistent this year, if he's up to that 35, 36, 37% range, then I mean, you could see a world where like 24, 25, 26 points a game is absolutely an on the table outcome for Jalen Green. I think we're being a little bit more conservative, just going with 22 or 23. That's still an uptick from last season. We saw him average 22 a game in his second year in the NBA, albeit that was on a losing team and not much structure, so you don't want to take too much away from that 22 a game. But Jalen is a guy that has the profile to score with the best of them, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see how Ime Udoka and the coaching staff try to tap into that this upcoming season. We want to know what your expectations are for Jalen Green. What are your predictions? What stat line do you want to see from Jalen? What do you want to see him add to his game this upcoming year? Let us know in the YouTube comments. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
You can find me on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.